like staircase. I just start falling down.
I guess I'll start first. Well, I'm Drew. I do the main editing, so this is why some of these shows take so long to get out. So any NDAs or stuff that you can't talk about now probably won't be irrelevant by the time some of this stuff comes out because I'm the only editor here.
All right.
So yeah, no, I'm more of the visual storyteller, or like photographer, all that kind of stuff, and cinematographer. And I do voiceover for this company too, and they're trying to help me get my reel out. I'm blabbing on about myself. I'm just trying to say, well, thank you for coming on. So obviously James and Jenna can introduce themselves. So that came off a little bit rude.
Great to meet you.
Yeah, thanks.
Hello, Nick. My name's James. First of all, it's a real pleasure to meet you.
Good to meet you.
And second, I am, how should I put this? I'm something of an actor. A friend of mine and I, we usually post a lot of comedy sketches on YouTube and TikTok under the Knuckle Sandwich Studios title, basically. We do a lot of comedy stuff, but aside from that, I also do a little bit of writing. Like I've written 2 children's books, and I'm in the middle of working on a 3rd one right now.
Nice. Congrats.
All I do is just either like I said earlier. He reminded me that I was like, oh crap, I could have said my thing too. All I do is make skits with action figures or do TikTok stuff, and then like I said, take pictures of them. I wish I had somebody else to do all that kind of stuff with. I'm just doing all of this by myself.
Yeah. That's one man band is the best kind of band if you can play in it.
Yeah.
No shame in that.
Hello, my name is Jenna, and I am mostly a drawer and writer for what I plan on doing is making animated projects, mostly TV shows, but sometimes movies for just making my own stories that are in that format because I just kind of prefer animation. And I'm the kind of person that runs on anxiety and sugar. So there you go.
That's a mood.
That's good. I think I run on that too. Anxiety and sugar, or just sugar, depending on the day.
Anxiety and caffeine for me. I know that feeling.
Yeah, I love caffeine. So that's awesome. So I don't know if you want me to introduce myself and talk about me.
For reference, I'm sorry.
No. And then we're good. And then, feel free to make this open dialogue, ask questions, and make this as we go. So my name is Nic Novicki. You may not be able to tell from looking at this, but I'm a little person. So I'm 3'10". And I'm a comedian and an actor and a producer, and I'm the founder and director of the Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge. It's a film competition where over the course of 5 days, you make a film that has somebody with a disability in front of or behind the camera. Now, I've been very lucky in my career. I've been in 50 TV shows and movies. I've toured all over the world. I've gotten to work with Mr. Doug Friel, and that you may know from another country. Really one of the first gigs I ever had, and it was just such an honor. But, really my trajectory has always been do as much as I can on my own because I'm 3'10". And, although I've had those lucky chances to kind of get the, just straight up opportunities of projects that were already being made and the engines were already running, like the one I got to work on with Doug. A lot of the other projects, have come from literally me creating and producing and doing my own stuff, doing a web series where I could be a gangster or the romantic lead, or a banker, or like a shady lawyer, all these kind of things that we can do. And now we have the ability to do it on our own. And whether that be through animation whether that be through TikTok or Instagram. I'm kind of, I'm getting old. I'm sort of new to TikTok, so you guys probably know more about TikTok than I do. But at the end of the day, these are all just, story is story, so however you tell it, through a book or through a movie or on stage, through a song or through jokes, we're storytellers, and I think what I've noticed is that, there's so much power in kind of owning and embracing your disabilities and who you are. And the audience wants it. They want to see something different, whether you have autism or you're a little person, you're in a wheelchair, you have some other kind of disability, that's I consider that like a superpower, because now you have the ability to kind of tap into that toolkit that other creators don't have, and that audiences want to feel authentic.
Say, kind of going back a little bit, because it's an open secret that, I can't remember his name right now. Dan Aykroyd is, I believe he is on the spectrum. So it's like, it's also like some of the older creative minds, even back then, like you have some of these people with like these creative minds that, some of these people didn't know that they had it. And so it's just kind of goes to show, because, Ghostbusters is highly regarded. And I think it was him and Harold Ramis worked on that script together, I believe. And it's just crazy. Like, you can tell people, it's like, hey, that was written by an autistic man. It's always really, sometimes it's really wild to tell that to people, because, I mean, yes, autism is being taken more serious nowadays and all that kind of stuff. But especially back then, it wasn't taken as serious, because there was at least from my understanding, I can't really, say 100%, we had a very limited view on it. We didn't even have a name for it up until like 30 years ago, I believe.
Yeah.
Something. So like, they just thought, some people were like some of the extremes. So like you only have like so many, like when you tell people, it's like, oh, hey, I'm on the spectrum, or hey, I have autism or whatever, sometimes they may just think of like, I don't know, like Rain Man, or I don't know, Forrest Gump, or some of these some of the characters that may or may not have it. Sorry.
One of my favorite movies of all time is a Morgan Freeman movie called Magic of Belle Isle, and if my memory is correct, there is a character in that story, and I think his name was Bobby, and I think he was probably also on the spectrum, even though he looked like he was even though he looked like a teenage boy, he was definitely on the spectrum. But he was a genuinely likable character, in my opinion.
Did that actor have autism too that played him, or?
I really don't know, but if he did, kudos to him.
I was gonna say, because this kind of pertains to that kind of question. How do you feel? Because this is something I think me and Jenna had a similar question about. Because we do have situations where the story, has a lead character that is not neurotypical, like a majority, believed to be majority of society, and a handful of the time they might cast an actor who is neurotypical to play a neurodivergent character. Like, I guess to better say it, I guess, how do you feel? How do you feel about that? Like, kind of doing that, because it doesn't exactly seem ethical. But I mean,
I can
you put it your way. You might be able to put it that way.
Like, what I find like very interesting about like the whole like this doesn't just go for like neurotypical people playing like autistic characters. This goes for like multiple other kinds of like it can go like multiple different ways, really. Like for example, like a cis person playing a transgender character, or like a I'm trying to like think of like an inverse option, kind of something like that. But
that question makes sense. So it's like somebody who is not part of the demographic that they are playing plays that part of that demographic. If
You
that's
know,
what
I
you're
mean,
trying to say.
yeah, no, no, no. I mean, these are great questions. I mean, for me, look, I think that the most authentic, story comes from somebody that's able to share their own experience. So they're connected into that world. So, when somebody plays a little person and they're not little, which has happened quite a bit, Lord of the Rings, different, Snow White movies and all these things. To me, I feel at times, aside from being, frankly, having a feeling like, what the heck, this could have been a great opportunity for a little person actor. I think sometimes you lose a little bit of the authenticity because there are times where you focus on things that are not necessarily something that a little person would always focus on, reaching something in a way, and they're struggling in this crazy, oh man, I can't get this light, and you're like, hey, just get on a stool, problem solved, and I think there tends to be the focus in areas that are not necessarily always 100%, the way that the community would like to have that perceived. Now, frankly, there's a lot of other factors. Having been a producer and, worked on both sides of the camera, getting a movie made is really hard. And so when you get somebody famous to be a part of a movie, as a filmmaker, you want that usually, because it's really hard to get money for a movie. So there's something to be said about that, and so for me, I always kind of talk about not just about the lead actor. I can see the reasoning behind why you need that one star, in that movie and focus on getting that star. To me, I think more of the problem comes when you have a supporting character that's not necessarily driving the budget, and you're kind of having somebody who's not authentically cast in that role, somebody without a disability per se. But Jenna, I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, how this could be the same within the LGBTQ community, within all kinds of different other communities. So, I think part of this has to be the discretion of the filmmakers, because they're the ones who wrote this and are directing it and they're producing it. But, I know for me, my goal is always to make the authentic version of a story, and to be as truthful as I can to projects, and also the most inclusive productions as I can, because for me, frankly, that's my what I bring to productions, so it's my world. I happen to know a lot of people that are talented actors in wheelchairs, or that have all kinds of disabilities. So for me, I think that brings something more unique to the world, and so projects that I work on tend to have a lot more kind of diversity in multiple layers.
The funny paradox in like people becoming much more aware of like trying to include like diversity and all this, like, Hollywood being weirdly obsessed with casting the same kind of person for like all kinds of different people. It's like, what's funny is that the actors, like these people that would fit well in those roles, like they are available, like they're ready to go. But for some reason, Hollywood just kicks them out. And now we're in this really weird situation where it's like you're making it harder on yourself for no reason.
But I know I can understand for a marketability standpoint, it might be better to have a big name in that kind of situation. So it's kind of a toss up where I understand financially it might be better to have a name that's like recognizable that you can sell a movie on. But then again, like I said, it feels a little bit disingenuous to have somebody that isn't, part of that kind of demographic playing a person who may or may not have that kind of issue. And then it kind of goes on to this next question I have, because I think it was a kind of a typecasting question, because besides more recent actors, or actually not even more recent actors, there are some big names out there that are little people. people, other big names that are little people, and that are doing serious roles right now. But because I'm 27, back when I was a little kid, comedy movies usually, unfortunately usually played up like anybody that was a little person, more of like in a comedic kind of sense or whatever. You didn't really have, at least in the major kind of sense or whatever. I'm trying to ask this in a way that doesn't come off kind of weird or kind of rude.
Yeah.
Yeah, like how do you kind of feel about that? Kind of, especially I guess it kind of goes for anybody disabled, but I guess especially your situation, being a little person, how does that kind of feel? Possibly even being typecast because you are. Yeah, that can go for any of that kind of.
Yeah, no, I mean, you bring up a good point. I've been an actor for over 20 years. So, I've seen a lot of different variations, and, you certainly have Peter Dinklage out there, from Game of Thrones, who's done unbelievable roles and great character arcs. I've been lucky to have had some really fun, cool roles too on TV shows and movies that didn't focus on me being a little person. But I guess to the point about comedy and how that portrays to somebody being a little person, I also think it's important to be able to be a part of comedies. And I don't think just because you're a little person that now we have to enter a world where, we got to be so nervous to do a joke that includes somebody with that's a little person that has a disability, because we don't want to offend the overall community. Because I think there's a certain point where, this is my kind of point of view and how I feel. So I don't speak for everybody, but I think we get ourselves in a position where we could be excluded out of comedies and have less exposure overall if we get into a place where we can also be a part of comedy. I think comedy should be able to tackle and educate just through comedy. I think sometimes if you could do a joke, or you're in an area where, being a little person, or, being a wheelchair user, and there happens to be no ramp there, I mean, that's a funny situation. If you can make it a funny situation, sure, it could be a sad situation, and it could be a, things are wrong with society situation. But I don't think that we should be excluded out of comedies and just in serious roles, because frankly, I think comedy is easier to digest for society. I think people would rather be entertained through comedy, my point of view, than a very serious, tragic, drama for 3.5 hour, movie that's, a period piece. I love those. I've gotten to be in some period pieces, and I think those are amazing. But I think that you don't necessarily reach as wide of an audience. So I think it's important to stay in comedy and to let people with disabilities be a part of comedy. Now, I also think that society is getting more sensitive than it was when I was younger. So I think there's different factors, where you grew up. I grew up on the East Coast. Everybody would make fun of everybody. So
I feel that, I'm up in Michigan, and especially my towns. There's little to no progressive people in my area. Like, I feel like I'm probably one of the more progressive people in my city. But I get that, and it is kind of true, and it's kind of a sad kind of thing that it's not just like one side that's specifically more sensitive. It's both sides that can be a little bit more sensitive and that kind of thing. Not to get into the politics of it, but it's a little sad to kind of see that, like, and you're right, it's good to kind of use comedy as a tool to kind of alleviate kind of certain situations, because if we just kind of made it all kind of, oh, woe is me, kind of like make it all woe is me, then that wouldn't be as, there wouldn't be really much light into it. Everybody would just kind of
one other point I want to make to that too is, I think there's one factor that I always bring in when I'm a part of a comedy, especially a comedy that with my height. I always want to be a part of the joke rather than the punchline.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, you know, there needs to be, are they laughing at me or with me, or am I part of the joke? So I think, you know, to your point, you know, original point that when you started, you know, watching comedies back 20 years ago, you know, little people were portrayed in a different way. And, you know, I think, sure, you know, 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, comedy has progressed a lot too. So I think it's important, you know, to look at situations and to stay current, you know.
Yeah.
So I think you can include people with disabilities, and I think the best way to do that is also to include us in the writing room and a part of the creative process, and also to have that opportunity where you're saying, hey, are we making this person, you know, whether it's disability or not, from a marginalized community, the punchline, or are they part of it, or can they give their spin? Is there another twist or a way they can tag on to the joke to make it feel more current and more something that community is going to love too?
And also, I think another thing that can be like, and this is something that I kind of like believe kind of strongly a bit, because this is something that I've noticed, like, especially with a lot of like people that watch like movies and shows and all that, is that I honestly think that it really is like not only like, you know, it's not only like powerful to put these kinds of people in like writers roles and like creative roles, but also to like portray these characters that have these unique attributes as just regular people with personality traits that anyone can relate to. And like they're like they can be like they act like any sort of person that just so happen to have these traits, and they don't ultimately make a huge big deal about it, because the moment that because I think the problem with a lot of these people nowadays is that they're scared of like, you know, we don't want to like stereotype people, we don't want to stereotype minority groups, we've already done enough damage into that point. But I think we've gone a little too like we've kind of become scared of like not really writing a character, so we instead just make a character that just that has these traits, and that's literally all their like personality, that's literally all they are. Like they don't have any other personality traits, they don't have any other personality traits beyond that. So like they're not stereotyping, they're just kind of a block of wood, and that's literally all they're like, that's all their traits are. And that just comes across more like pandering. Like you didn't even try to actually make this person a character, like an actual like person or anything. You just put them in. You just put this person in there because just to give yourself a good job sticker. Like I think it really is much more powerful and much more resonant with people if we just make these characters as like regular human beings that just so happen to have these traits.
Make it feel more genuine. Yeah,
I agree. You know, I mean, I think part of that too is like, you know, the more we create our own projects, then I think it's like that leads the opportunities to get projects greenlit in an authentic way. And it seems like you guys are doing that. I mean, you're already doing all this awesome, you know, content, books and, you know, TikTok videos, and, you know, it seems like this is, I don't even know, a podcast or
you know, it's a work in progress.
Whatever it is, it's something, you know, and it's something that shows, you know, that's the beauty of the new times we're in, is this gets in front of a decision maker and they watch it and they go, oh, okay, wait a minute, I didn't even think of that. And now they're, you know, they gets the brain going and thinking in the you know, correct way.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out. It's kind of a layered question, so to speak, because you were fortunate enough to play Lego Spider-Man in the more recent Across the Spider-Verse. What the first layer of the question? How do you feel about that? And two, what's it like working on like a large like form? I guess large form or big scale movie, like super huge scale movie like that.
Yeah. So it was an incredible you know, opportunity, and something that I'm very honored, to be a part of the Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse and just the Spider-Verse world that is seen by millions and millions of people around the world. And, people will come up to me after comedy shows and want photos and me to sign stuff. It's kind of crazy because I've been in the business for a long time. So even though it was a small role, to be a part of a big project was a huge milestone in my career and something I feel very proud to have had that opportunity. And even more so, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, the writers and producers of that, have been mentors for the Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge. And they also found Danielle Perez, who's a very talented actor and comedian, and she's a wheelchair user. And she played the role of Sun Spider in this, and that came from exposure from the film challenge. And
because
it was kind of crazy.
Yeah, and Sun Spider was I think I know who you're talking about. Sun Spider is the one that was making some of the clips. She was the one with the wheelchair, like the literal spider wheelchair and all that kind of stuff. It was a fun inclusion, and that's actually really cool. I actually also really thought it was really interesting that they had, I can't remember how old the kid was that did the animation for that. He was like 12, right? The animator for that Spider-Man, the Lego sequence. It's really amazing, like how they let him do all that, because like if I remember right, I don't know if it was included in the original draft, but they included it after he made the animation for like the trailer for it. So
no,
it's really cool, like how they kind of do that for these kind of people.
Yeah, that's all out there in articles. And the movie I think was in the finishing phase, and they were working on it, and they found this trailer. So this is again an example of what we were talking about before, of creating your own content and putting it out there, and this kid was doing Lego trailers and putting stuff out, I think on YouTube, or maybe it was TikTok or Twitter, I'm not exactly sure, but he was doing this great work, and that got that got him this opportunity to animate stuff. And honestly, that this kid got me one of my best opportunities as an actor and a comedian that's been working for a long time, because the work that they did led to an opportunity for me. And and again, the work that Danielle Perez did through the film challenge led to that opportunity where she was able to be seen by those writers and producers. And so I think that, all of that really goes back to, do as much as you can on your own and just put it out there. And you never know, where you're going to get your next opportunity or where you're going to get spotted. But I would say that the more you're able to put it out there and submit to other film festivals, frankly, I recommend all of you guys next year to make a film for the Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge. It's a 5-day competition. You make a film and you own it after. So I'll send to Doug and to everyone else on your team info next year. Love to talk to all of you about it. I think it's finding those opportunities to just make content and get it seen by the industry. We have a lot of mentor meetings and other opportunities, but again, you could be doing that on your own, which you already are. And then I saw your hand. The last thing I want to say before I kick it over to this is, you asked me, was it a different experience, working on a bigger project? And honestly, it's really not. Whether I've worked on, Boardwalk Empire and The Sopranos and all these other big shows, it's the same thing, whether you're doing it in a school or you're doing it with your friends or you're doing it, in a, $100 million, project. At the core of it, you're still doing the same thing you're doing, which is just working. Sometimes there's just more, equipment around you, but it's the same kind of tools that you learned as an actor or a writer or comedian, whether you're in front of 5 people or 10,000 people. You're still doing the same thing. And, the core of what you're doing as an artist is the exact same. And so it's just staying grounded in where you are.
I wanted to bring up the whole film festival idea, and I was working with Doug on this a while ago, but he and Todd, who runs Ting Ting Animate,
Yeah.
they asked me a while ago to work on a possible movie. What I wanted to do was adapt my own take on Bram Stoker's Dracula, and right now it's put on hold, but I would very much like to pitch it to this film festival, if it's okay with you.
Sure. Well, one thing with that is, so I'll walk you through what you do, just so it's in the back of your minds, because it won't be till next year. But we open up registration in January. It's once a year. You make a film. It has to have somebody with a disability in front of or behind the camera. So either any of you could be the writer or actor. We also hope that somebody is also an actor, because, with a disability, because that's kind of part of the mission. But you make a film over the course of 5 days, which is usually in April. But to your point about could you play Dracula, you could, but every year we change the genre. So we give you a genre and a couple props that need to be included. So you would need to figure out last year's genre was romance. So if you were going to do Dracula, it would need to be Dracula that's, getting ready for a date, or, something like that. So, and then finding ways to fit within the theme. So the fun thing about it is you get a finished film over the course of 5 days. Now, we've seen some films done animated. We've seen films that were done completely remote, where everyone's doing it through Zoom. And we've seen big scale productions where people have the same kind of equipment that people use on, major TV shows and movies, huge sound stages and all kinds of stuff. But you know what? At the end of the day, story is always king. And we've seen films that were shot on, cell phones that ended up beating films that had Oscar winners a part of them. And because ultimately, it just, they were able to really tell a unique story. But I would say, whether it's for the challenge or not, that's awesome to have that goal of making, the Dracula movie. And I hope you do make it. My advice on that is sometimes it's easier to think of if it's hard to make that because it's so expensive for costumes and things like that. Maybe you think of that as your second film to do, and an easier movie that may take less special effects or things like that as the movie that you do before that one, or you just figure out how to do it and say, look, I'm going to do it in my mom's kitchen, and she's got all this equipment, and I know that we can make this look like the sleep, or I don't know. But that's awesome that you're working on that.
I was gonna say, because that reminded me, and I guess it's a little late now. That's the last one was romance, because I actually had personally I had an idea for one of, it's kind of gives the idea of how it may feel for dating with autism, where the main character at first is played by a Muppet type puppet, where you only see him as that for like, it'll be like a couple minutes short, and just for him to go through looking for a date, finding somebody, and then getting ready for the date, and then it ends with him finding the date and her accepting him for himself, where he can feel like himself. And I have this idea where it kind of transitions and shows what he actually looks like. So like when he shows how he feels like this kind of Muppet, or kind of feels like a little bit like this, but then like showing how he is,
Yeah.
and when she accepts him for himself, I guess I'm a year late. But I guess that goes to
No, you never could do that
ahead.
anytime. I think you're always, you're never too late. You can always tell a story.
Yeah. So I guess because it's kind of we kind of brought it up in the beginning and a little bit earlier too, is because now obviously the writers got their deal with everything. Now it's still having to do with the actors, and all this, voice actors, face actors, all this kind of stuff. The team at least a chunk of the team, definitely feels like, a lot of this like studio dependence on AI is very unethical because like, we're getting reports that like studios are wanting to replace actors with AI doubles or like CGI doubles, which can be even worse because, then you're kind of putting actors out of a job because you don't want to have to cast extras or, God forbid you want to like, recast a actor who's been dead for like 10, 20 years and you're just going to use their likeness. Heck, I just heard like it was like yesterday or 2 days ago. Like I guess Tom Hanks's likeness was used in a commercial online, and like that's really messed up because he didn't even give a green light to that. So it's like I guess what's your viewpoint on all that? Because like I personally think it's really messed up.
Yeah, I mean that's a big issue, and I think, look, I've been proud to be part of the Screen Actors Guild for 20 years now, which is kind of wild. But I think there's always going to be a place for artists, and I think luckily we can't be replaced because we tell the stories, and we whether that be through writing or through acting and through camera work and directing and all these amazing roles behind the camera. But yeah, we are entering scary times where AI is quietly moving into a lot of sectors, not just the entertainment industry. But I feel very proud of the union, both the Screen Actors Guild and WGA for taking a stand on AI and saying, hey, we need to make sure that this is a place for artists and that we continue to be able to thrive. And I'm confident that the studios and the networks are in the process, or they already have with the WGA, and as negotiations are currently happening with SAG-AFTRA, I'm confident that there's going to be a great deal, and that we're going to get protection.
I know this is probably just me being cynical, but the problem is that I feel like even if we because this has been brought up like numerous times, especially with like the Writers Guild. So something tells me is that even though we found like negotiations or something like that, companies are going to still keep doing what they are doing because ultimately they don't care. Money will ultimately change any sort of like mind. And that's just kind of the sad thing is really. You're kind of just like they'll treat you as part of a cog in the machine no matter no matter how much you cry for help. And it's really saddening to see that.
They'll always find a loophole somehow. If it saves them a couple cents, it's a sad thing.
Oh, this is like just another thing I wanted to like bring up about being like a one-man person, like making your own like stuff and all. Like I've been like trying to like do that, but problem is I am still a college student and I'm stuck in college and I'm hating it. And I am just like it's like I'm like a part of these like, even though I'm like taking classes that are like a part of my like major or stuff like that, I just kind of look at these things and I go, this is just not it. I'm going to actually like see like an experience, like actually experience the entire thing in the actual like industry. And I feel like I know this is a bit of like a cliche or something like that, but it's like I feel like I at least kind of understand the gist of what to expect. So it's kind of like I just kind of feel stuck. And it's like it's kind of frustrating, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's that's a natural way to feel. I think a lot of students feel that way, and I think honestly, once you get into the quote unquote out of college and into the real field of acting and animating or writing or whatever your ultimate goal is, you'll probably still have a little bit of feeling like that.
Yeah.
That's the nature of the entertainment industry. But and the feelings of like, why didn't I get that role? Man, I was supposed to be in this filming in Europe for a year, and they said I had it, and it just didn't work out. So I think that there's always kind of feelings like that, and part of it is, just being comfortable and saying, you know what, there's going to be another job, and that's just the nature of the entertainment industry.
Yes, I'm very scared of what, how fast technology is advancing. If studios are going to make, a lot of us irrelevant. I really hope not. God, I hope not, because, I've had the same dream of being in this kind of business since I was a little kid. So just the prospect in the past year and a half, it almost feels like, probably just a year, but the prospect of all the stuff that's been going down for this past year has been really frightening for me. Especially you're seeing how it's affecting the art world too. It's like that is just, it's crazy. And I really hope that, because I've said, in these meetings, and it's probably, and I think they actually put that in kind of a guidelines or whatever when they made the writers agreement, is you can use this as a tool, but this should not totally replace the art, because you can have that as something that aids you, but you shouldn't be profiting off of a finished product from it. This isn't something that you should make your whole livelihood. Unfortunately, there are people that just make, or just post all this art that's, I wouldn't even call it art, but all this stuff that's made by AI, or all the stuff that you get from that, and it's a very concerning, I guess is probably my best kind of feeling for it. So
yeah, I mean, it's valid. It's valid to feel that way, but again, I believe there's always going to be a place for artists. We've been creating art since the beginning of time, so it's have no fear. There will be a place always for us. But yeah, I mean, the other side of it is, will it be harder to get jobs or those things? I mean, who knows? I don't predict the, future, but I just know that I think people have always kind of said a version of that. When TV came out, people are like, the movie industry is dead. And, I think the times certainly have changed. And I think, I'm grateful that the unions kind of pushed back and said, hey, we need residuals. We need to change how payment goes so that artists can make a living. And now with protections of AI, and I think frankly the studios and the networks too are not always on the opposite side. I think the overall industry, and not just entertainment industry, is changing so much with technology, that I think everybody's kind of trying to figure out what's happening.
It's really nice to have people represent creators who might not have as large as a voice as people, neurotypical people, I guess it would probably, for the better sake of the term. So it was really nice having you on, and I appreciate that you were patient with me, because I was trying to find the right words, because I'm always nervous to say the wrong thing. So it was really, I appreciate your patience with me too. So
no, I mean, you and everybody, you guys are great interviewers, and this was a fun talk and a great hang.